Hi everyone, Nigel Giam here, GP Program Director for the St Mary's Scheme and Course Director for MentorMRCGP courses. So we're going to be continuing with my Mentor CSA Bitesize podcasts, and this is number 4 in the series. If you haven't listened to the first 3, would really recommend that you give those a go, because they focus really very much on the first half of the consultation. And today we're going to start moving into the second half of the consultation. So we're going to focus on Competency 6, which is making an appropriate working diagnosis. Competency 7, a management plan which is appropriate and in line with current best practice. Competency 10, does not demonstrate an awareness of the management of risk or make the patient aware of the relative risks of different options. And within this, we're going to be revisiting Competency 2, which was not recognising the issues, priorities in the consultation, and also Competency 14, does not identify or use appropriate psychological or social information to place the problem in context. Now, what's very interesting is that I've been teaching for this exam for the MRCGP since 2002 and for the new MRCGP, CSA, since it was conceived. So I've seen a lot of candidates who've struggled with this exam. And what's interesting is when you look at their feedback, actually when you look at Competency 6, often it's not marked down at all. And yet the global overall mark is not very good. So GPST3s will often come to me and say, well, look, I don't understand why I failed this exam because I knew everything about the diagnosis and yet I scored so poorly on that particular station. Conversely, I had stations where I didn't know what was going on and I seemed to do okay. So why is that? Well, it takes us again back to the point that the CSA is not a diagnostic-driven exam. So the focus of the marks are not with Competency 6. Imagine the last time you saw a patient with a rash. And the patient says to you, okay, so what's the diagnosis of this rash? You may have well gone, well, you know what? I don't actually know. But what I do know is that it's not a serious rash and that you were concerned about it being something like meningitis. So I can reassure you it's definitely not that. Let's call it a non-serious rash. So this really starts highlighting what we specialise in as GPs. You cannot control what comes in through the door. How you manage your uncertainty, how you're perceived to do so, that's what's key. So that's Competency 10, the management of risk. And if we start rethinking about the first 3 podcasts with regards to how we start gathering data, the reason we're gathering data in a story symptom system approach is to help us identify, firstly, whether what is presenting is potentially serious or not before we move our way up towards the diagnosis. So this is absolutely key. So how do we manage a patient that comes in with an undifferentiated complaint? How do we manage uncertainty? This is one of the key themes and I guess fears that a lot of GP registrars have. What if I don't know what's going on? Well, firstly, it's very important to stay close to the narrative. So if a patient's come in with, let's say, a rash and they're very worried about meningitis, so that's competency to their agenda, after you've examined the patient, you want to readdress their agenda immediately. So remember, these global competencies 1 and 2, they outweigh everything. If you get marked down in 1 and 2, it becomes very difficult to pass. So you want to readdress Competency 2. Don't worry about Competency 6, which is the working diagnosis. Readdress Competency 2. So I know when you came in, Mr. Smith, today, you were very concerned about this rash being something like a serious infection. Meningitis is what you were concerned about. Let me reassure you at this point, it's not meningitis that we're dealing with here. Then share your thought processes with your patient. Your rash doesn't have those typical features of what we would deem a meningitic rash, and reassuringly, you don't have any other symptoms to suggest it's a serious infection. So share your thought processes before you start committing to Competency 10, serious or not serious. I'd like to reassure you, I don't think this rash is anything too serious at all. So it is the management of risk that's absolutely key here. Serious or not serious. See the analogy as a swimming pool. You need to get into the shallow end with your patient. Imagine that as being serious or not serious before you work your way up towards the deep end, which is the working diagnosis. But what you don't want to do is just jump into the deep end. Because if you jump into the deep end, it's going to become a diagnostic-driven consultation. You're going to forget holistically what the patients come in with and what they're actually concerned about. So that's Competency 14 again. Thinking about that holistic practice, that you're managing the patient first and foremost before necessarily the diagnosis. So Competency 7, a management plan that is appropriate and in line with current best practice, is of course about showing that you are up to date with evidence-based medicine, but more importantly, in fact, that your management plan is reactive to that level of clinical severity. So that rash that's come in? Can you recognise potentially, if it is serious, does it actually require to be seen today? Does it require an admission? Perhaps it's not as serious as that, but perhaps it's actually serious enough to warrant an urgent outpatient review or specialist review, or actually, perhaps it is just a non-specific viral-related rash with no other red flags and something that you can contain within general practice yourself with a good follow-up and a good safety net. Okay, so that's it for today. Do check us out on the website, passmrcgp.com, Facebook and Twitter. Hope to see you on one of the courses. Over and out for now.